Hello, what is up? If you guys are new here, my name is Mackenzie. If you're not new, thank you for coming back. So, as I promised at the end of my last video, today's video would not be just about jumping spiders. Now listen, I know so many of you guys are here for the glass content, you're here for the stained glass only, and I understand that. And I know recently I've been doing kind of a lot of videos and shorts about my jumping spiders. Jumping spiders are a part of my life, and I've been having so much fun making content on them. So please comment down below, let me know what you guys think of the jumping spider content. Do you guys want to see more of it? Do you want to see less of it? Do you not care? But yeah, I've been having so much fun filming it, so I hope you guys enjoy it. But that's why I wanted to make today's video, which is a perfect mix of both. We're not doing actual jumping spider content, but we are making a stained glass jumping spider. So hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. So yeah, that sounds like something you're into. Let's get started. Okay, so here is a design that I came up with, you guys. As usual, I made this design on my G-Pad on an app called Sketchbook. If you guys want a dedicated video on how I actually make my designs and stencils, just let me know. Let me know in the comments below and I can absolutely do that. But this is what I came up with, and as always, I kind of laid my shipping tape across the front. Like I said many times, I only use shipping tape instead of like stencil sheets or sticky backed clear sheets because I have so much of it on hand, but you can use whatever you want just to make it into a permanent reusable stencil. So I've done that. Now I'm going to go in and actually cut the design out. I'm not going to use shears or anything like that. I'm just going to use regular scissors and cut it out as normal. Okay, so before I completely finish cutting out the stencil, I kind of like to use it and just hold it up against all the different glasses that I think I'm going to use for this particular project. It just kind of helps me visualize what it's actually going to look like when I'm done. So as you can see, I picked out a solid black glass, this beautiful silver mirror Van Gogh, and a black-based iridescent glass. Okay, so now that I've decided, I know I'm definitely going to want to use those three colors of glass, I'm going to go ahead and finish up cutting out all of my pieces of my stencil. Okay, so here is where I made the first mistake of this project. Now, you guys know I don't cut traditionally. I outline all of my stencil pieces and then go in after and cut them. But if you guys have seen the other video testing out Mark Stay products, I had picked up this Mark Stay 2, and on it, it says that you can use it to attach pattern pieces to glass for grinding. And that made me think maybe I should try grinding glass the traditional way or cutting out stencil pieces the traditional way that other people do it, which is by sticking the actual pattern or design pieces to the glass itself and having those pieces on the glass while you're grinding. So I figured I would try the Mark Stay 2 for it, and to be honest, it just made an absolute mess, which I should have seen coming. Not only that, it made the actual stencil pieces super sticky, so those were a mess and became useless after that because I wasn't going to keep dealing with it, and it just made it more difficult in the long run. It was so hard for my Sharpie to stick to it, especially the silver Sharpie, so it just was sliding all over the place. It didn't end up sticking. It made a mess of my glass. It was harder to wash off because I had used so much of the product trying to get it to stick, and I went kind of back and forth. I tried using a little bit, I tried using more, I tried using just kind of in between amount, but no matter what I used and no matter what size piece of paper or stencil piece I used, it just did not work. There was no way that that was going to stick to the glass well enough to get it done through the actual grinding process without moving. So in the end, I end up completely removing it and just doing it the way I've always done, which is just by tracing the outline of my stencil pieces and bringing it to the glass grinder and cutting it out. Okay, so now that it's time to start scoring or cutting the glass, this is when I really figured out how much of a problem that mark stay was going to be, or trying to do it this way. I don't know if this is just a mark stay issue. Like I said, I don't traditionally do glass this way. I just trace my stencils with Sharpie and cut them out. So like I said, this is when I kind of figured out how much of a mess it actually was going to be. So I just immediately pulled those stencil pieces off because they were moving all over the place, just trying to cut around them. So I knew they were never going to last through the grinder. And I also suspect that has something to do with the fact that they are reusable and they are laminated stencil pieces. I'm assuming that there is specific paper that you use for stencils that you keep on the glass through this process. So all I'm doing now is just going in with my basic pencil grip glass cutter, scoring all of my pieces, and then going in and breaking them apart, which, as I've said before, I think is the best part, just snapping them with running pliers. Okay, so now that we've got all of our glass cut, we're going to move over to grinding and using the ring saw. So we're going to have to use a few different bits and tools here. So starting with a hole bit, we're going to have to use this 1/4 inch hole bit to drill our initial holes. As you can see, I'm having trouble with the Sharpie because of the mark stay being all over the glass, so I had to stop, go back, re-outline my eyes there. So anyways, we're going in with a regular 1/4 inch hole bit to drill our holes. Now we can come over to the ring saw, which has a separating blade on it, and that is how we can get our holes cut out in the middle of a piece of glass. So as you guys have heard me say a million times, the Gryphon Zephyr is my favorite ring saw. This is the Taurus Ring Saw 3. I like to keep a separating blade on this one and a regular blade on the other. Today we needed the separating blade, so that is why I'm using this one. So because we went in and drilled those 1/4 inch holes in the middle of this piece of glass, now we can go in with this separating blade and completely drill out those eyes in the center. I am also going to quickly grind or cut out the eyes that are on the side of the spider's face right here as well with the ring saw, and any other pieces that I need to use a ring saw for. So any other piece that I couldn't grind away or cut away naturally. Now we're back over to the regular grinder using a regular grinding bit. I've got a 1/2 inch bit, and we're going to just simply grind the edges of every piece of glass like you do normally. Okay, so I told you guys in my Inland Wizard grinder review video that I would continue to update you guys, and I want you guys to actually hear how bad this grinder sounds when it is running currently. So I'm going to show you what it sounds like in a second. Yeah, so that's how that's sounding, and I got this grinder at the end of January of this year. So anyways, we are now just going in and kind of fine-tuning everything. I really want to make sure that everything fits before we clean up and put our grinders away. So I'm just putting together all of these small pieces of the spider head, the eyes, making sure that everything is going to fit together nicely, and accounting for the space that the foil is going to take up. So just making sure everything is going to fit one last time before we stop grinding. All right, so now that grinding is completely done, everything was washed multiple times in that water bucket. So you always have a nice water bucket with clean water next to your grinder to put your glass in. Give it a good rinse before you take it to your sink. You don't want any grinder dust or glass dust going down your pipes. They will absolutely be destroyed. So everything is nice and clean. Now we are obviously on to foiling. So we are copper foiling all the edges of our stained glass, and this step is done so we can actually solder. All we're doing here is simply wrapping essentially copper tape. So it's a sticky backed copper tape, and we are wrapping every single outer edge of glass in that copper foil tape. And what that does is allow us to actually solder this piece together, because solder is not going to stick to glass. It is only going to stick to copper foil. Sorry to all you folks that know how to make stained glass, but if anybody's new here, they should know. So all we're doing is wrapping, like I said, all of our edges in copper foil tape and then burnishing. So burnishing is essentially just kind of pushing down all of the edges and really rubbing that copper foil in, making it nice and smooth, and making sure that the adhesion to the glass is as perfect as it can be. Now you can see I'm going back in and I'm patching. So sometimes on super deep curves, you'll notice that your copper foil splits. You can't leave it split because the solder will not stick to those split sections. So what I'm doing is cutting up tiny, tiny thin pieces or thin strips of copper foil, going back in and going over those areas that are split to just patch those sections up. This is the time where I start getting really excited because you can really start to see how this piece is going to look when you're done. It is really starting to come together, but we've got some final touches to do, and we're going to do some enamel painted eyes. So I want to do some nice big, I guess, pupils in the center of the 4 eyes that are visible. So all I'm doing is taking some black enamel paint and using the back of a paintbrush to make a perfect circular drop. So I'm just dipping it into the enamel paint and directly putting it on top to make perfect little pupil eyes. Now, because we're using enamel, we are definitely going to want to bake this, and I am going to do detail on the abdomen as well, but I'm not going to do that until after our piece is completely done, and we'll talk about that later on. Okay, so I let those pieces dry overnight, and then in the morning popped them in the oven and baked them according to the directions for this specific enamel paint. Now we can move on to soldering. So I'm going to be using 60-40 solder for this entire piece. And I'm actually using a gel flux. I am testing out a new gel flux. I know, crazy. I am a Novocan girl for everything, including liquid flux, but testing out a new one, we'll talk about that in a different video. So we're getting this piece soldered together, and all I'm doing is simply tack soldering each important piece in place first. So because there are so many tight fitting places, I'm really focusing on kind of pinching those places together, tacking them together first, then going back in and laying down a nice tinning and a nice bead after that. So because we have so many small sections, we have to be really, really careful about heat cracking these pieces. So anywhere like in between those eyes where we have very, very small sections of glass, we have to go very slow. We do not want to go over it and over it again. We do not want to heat crack this piece. So just be careful. Now we can attach a chain. So I'm just going to place some 8mm jump rings right at the seams here, and we've got our chain attached, ready to hang. So now it's time to give this thing a bath. I just took it to the sink, gave it a really good, nice light scrub with soft bristles, lots of Dawn dish soap and warm soapy water. Now we can coat this thing in patina. So I am being absolutely generous. I am using Novocan black patina and covering this thing. We're going to once again take it back to the sink to give it the same type of wash, and then we're done with patina. And I've got to say, this thing is looking absolutely adorable. I love it. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, I was thinking about painting the abdomen, and the reason I didn't do it earlier and bake it with the eyes is because I just wasn't sure. I didn't want to paint it and bake it on and regret it. So I am kind of loosely basing this, I guess, off the Phidippus Audax, so the bold jumping spider. And I didn't know if I was going to like the texture difference that sometimes enamel paints can bring to a completely smooth glass. So putting this enamel paint on the black glass, especially it being such a high contrasting color, as you can see here, I did kind of the lip that is almost visible on most jumping spiders right above their pedipalps and their chelicera. So I didn't end up liking the fuzzy texture that I added, and I didn't like that upper lip, but I did end up liking the kind of classic bold design on the abdomen. So that is the only thing that I actually ended up leaving. Everything else I ended up removing with some acetone. All right, guys, that is it. That is our finished jumping spider. Now let's take a good look at this thing in some good lighting. Good job. You are my favorite for a reason. I fucking love you.